Jeez, that's so loud. My apologies. A little heavy-handed, apparently. Time is now 2:00. I am going to open the City Council study session for May 5th, 2026. May I please get a roll call?
Councilor Koso,
Here.
Mayor Pro Tem Lawyer,
Here.
Mayor Woodruff,
Here.
Councilor Yazzie,
Here.
Councilor Gonzalez.
Present.
Then may I please get a reading of the Indigenous Land Acknowledgement?
This is a call to honor and respect Indigenous sovereignty and self-determination. As residents and visitors of Durango, we are called upon to educate ourselves about the history and cultural heritage of the land we inhabit. The city of Durango is situated on the ancestral homelands and territories of the Nuchu, Ute, Jicarilla Apache, Pueblos of New Mexico, Hopi-Sinom, Hopi, and Dene Navajo nations. The original stewards of this land were forcibly removed and exposed to countless atrocities by the United States government, including repeatedly broken treaties, forced assimilation, the tragic legacy of Indian boarding schools, and the loss of ancestral homelands. We recognize lasting generational trauma exists within Native communities today. We affirm the continuing importance of ancestral sites to descendant communities as integral to the living cultural landscape. This acknowledgement only becomes meaningful when combined with accountable relationships and informed actions. May this serve as a step toward inclusion and reconciliation.
Thank you. That moves us on to agenda item number 2.1.
Yes, Mayor and Council, we have John Usry here to give a presentation. This was in request to Councilor Yazzie's request about a Police Department City Hall project and our project parking update. I know as we've gone through some of our outreach or engagement efforts, we have received some feedback regarding in some groups of wanting to make sure that we're able to sell the current PD and City Hall. So there are some parking options that they have been looking into and presenting to Council.
Great. Let me try that again. Mayor, members of the council, thanks for having me here today to discuss our current parking situation and options we have for the new City Hall and Police Station as requested by the council. So first, we wanted to start with the required number of parking spaces on the site, how many of those spaces we're able to satisfy, and additional due diligence we've used to validate those assumptions. So we are looking at a required number of parking spaces for our current program at 161 spaces. This was developed by HDR with an in-depth analysis against the Land Use Development Code as adopted by the City of Durango. As stated earlier, our current 30% design concept anticipates 78 spaces that we can fit on the site given the current grading constraints. And then we did reference 2 traffic impact studies. One was performed by SEH as part of this project using ITE standards, which is International Transportation Engineering standards. They had assumed 159 spaces without going into the level of depth that HDR did. That was also validated by PST Engineering that did a traffic impact study as part of the master plan effort. In tandem with Reynolds Ash and Associates. So with that, we have 83 spaces that we are looking to solve for to satisfy our code requirement of 161 spaces. So this table on the right is a summary of the different options we're going to go into detail that could satisfy that gap. So the first option is really 2 parts. The first part would be leveraging the transit center, which is currently owned by the City of Durango. This site has about 150 parking spaces. Through detailed conversations with parking managers who have a good amount of traffic data on parking usage for that site, they feel there's 64 spaces that are currently not utilized on the site that could be used for city staff at the City Hall and Police Department. This would be an immediate solution. The one caveat is the land use development code does require parking within a 1/4 mile radius of the site. This falls just outside of that by 430 feet. So this would require a variance in order to leverage this site for those 64 parking spaces. We also feel this is on average about a 6-minute walk from the site, so could potentially forward multimodal transit goals for the city. Now that still leaves 19 spaces that are required to satisfy the total 161 space requirement. So another option, leveraging again city-owned land, would be to utilize parking spaces at the Mason Center. Again, this used to be Mason Elementary School, which was demolished in 2019, turned into a park with tennis courts. And we currently have 14 parking spaces available on that site. There's also the old gym structure, which is no longer able to be utilized for its original intended purpose. So that's now utilized as storage for the Parks and Recreation Department. Our team feels that could be demolished. That is adjacent or in close proximity to the parking lot. We feel that could be redeveloped for an additional 14 parking spaces. The anticipated cost, without going into too much due diligence, is about $200,000. This is above and beyond what we're currently carrying in our budget to develop those additional 14 spaces for a total of 28 parking spaces at the Mason Center. So the combination of leveraging the existing transit center and Mason Center, it consists of option number 1. Option number 2 is to leverage the existing City Hall site and the existing police department site to be redeveloped for parking. Both of these sites fall within the 1/4 mile radius, and HDR has done a quick analysis to determine we could fit 58 spaces here at the City Hall site and 45 spaces at the police department site. This would come at additional cost beyond what we currently have in our budget. The first cost is the loss of the resale value. The city would still own these properties, so we've included, based on an analysis by HDR, what those properties could sell for as potential lost revenue. We've also included the redevelopment costs and anticipated hazardous material mitigations. So we feel the cost, in addition to what we currently have in our budget, would be about just under $4 million for the City Hall site and just over $2.6 million for the police department site. Between both of these sites, that would satisfy our requirement for an additional 83 spaces. Option number 3 is to enter it into shared agreements to satisfy the parking deficit. The first one would be to partner with other government agencies. This could be county, state level, with CDOT or other agencies in order to have a shared cost agreement to develop additional parking that could also be utilized for city staff at City Hall and the police department. The biggest constraint is there's uncertainty with this option, and these agreements do take time to develop, materialize, and ultimately satisfy the infrastructure needed for parking. We do anticipate that this would stretch beyond the time that we would occupy the new City Hall and police department. So we do anticipate a variance just to bridge that gap between when this option would be realized. Another option within this is to reach out to private partners. This could be a developer. We've seen several municipalities enter into agreements with developers for mixed-use projects that include parking arrangements. This helps shed the risk onto the development, share some of the cost. Another option in pursuit of private entities is to lease parking spaces from existing parking lots. We haven't shared any details of what that could be because we don't want to damage the city's negotiating position if they were to pursue those options. And then the last option is a city-led standalone structure. Again, we do see this as more of a significant cost to have a multi-story parking structure. But the city would be more in control. That would reduce risk. We just see this as a higher cost option than what we've previously presented. And then, of course, there's the last option is to grant a variance that would negate satisfying the 161 parking spaces and to move forward with what we're able to satisfy on the existing site, which is 78 parking spaces. So we've compiled, again, really the first three options. First being leveraging the Transit Center and Mason Center in combination for a total of 92 spaces. This would satisfy our parking requirement. We would be looking for a variance that would allow us to exceed that quarter-mile radius. And there would be some work with demolishing the old gym structure and building parking at the Mason structure. Again, this is leveraging city-owned land. We think this could be realized quickly and immediately at low cost to the city. Option number 2 is redeveloping the existing City Hall and Police Department buildings to be parking lots. This would satisfy our parking requirement with 103 spaces. This could be done in the project timeline that we are looking at, but this would come at a higher cost to the city. And then the third option is to enter agreements either for leasing or to develop additional property to be used for parking. Again, we feel the biggest constraint to this is the potential cost, either recurring costs for lease payments or for the development, and then the timeline of this. There's a lot of uncertainty and could extend past when we're looking at completing this project. So while we're on this slide, I'd like to entertain questions.
Yeah, mine says, what did you do for yours? Mine says HDMI.
Oh, I didn't have that. That's fancy.
Yeah.
Back to home. Let's try that. Always go home. Go home.
All right, perfect.
Sorry, John, we're figuring out the technology up here.
Oh, no problem.
All right. Mayor Pro Tem Lawyer.
Okay. Hi. Thank you for the presentation. The 15% vacancy reduction, I'm assuming that's because when we move into the buildings, we're anticipating we're not going to be full capacity. Is that correct? Or what does that mean?
Yes, that's anticipating you don't have 100% occupancy at any one point in time. I'm sorry, and this is in reference to the 161 parking space
Yes,
analysis.
I'm just assuming you can
No,
remind
thank
me
you.
as to what I'm talking about. So
Yes.
yeah, the 161 spaces, it says after 15% vacancy reduction. That's just because we're not going to be full capacity for the buildings.
In my understanding, and I'll defer to Jamie if she wanted to verify, but that this is built into the land use development code to come up with that requirement. That's not an exception. Our team is proposing that's built into
Okay.
the land use development code that helps us arrive to our required parking number.
So any private, if someone privately owned this building, they would have this 15% vacancy reduction.
Yes, that
Okay.
does not account for any special treatment for our project team that any other developer wouldn't receive.
Okay, great. We had, and you might have to call other people up here. A few years ago, we had a study done on the Mason Center land that included looking at housing, looking at remodeling the Mason Center, included a bunch of things. I know that like we all decided as a council, and then the recommendations were no housing. It doesn't make sense there. Was there any other recommendations for highest and best use outside of we wanted to keep it a public park and green space and the park for the children? Do you remember?
I don't remember the 100% accuracy, but I generally would tend to agree that that's an accurate assumption. I just know mostly about the housing,
Can-
that was an affordable housing or workforce housing use, and that was not favored for with the council at the time.
Do you think it would be appropriate for someone on staff to find that presentation or that information and email it to us? Or
Scott may know, but we can definitely email it as well.
yeah, you were here at least.
So yes, good afternoon, Scott McLean, Parks and Recreation. That there was some analysis done on housing, and council city decided that that was not an appropriate use there. Staff had also looked at opportunities for reusing that facility. We did meet with FCI, who happens to be the same contractor we're working with now, to look at that, give us just some general cost estimates on what it would be to redevelop that building. It is a shell. There's no utilities, no service, anything to it. So we looked at it, but the cost there was significant to remodel that. And I think part of the interest of Parks and Rec and having some admin space in City Hall was to not have to develop another facility like that for admin. So it puts us in the same facility as other admin staff within the city, and then save some money, cheaper going into City Hall with some admin staff for Parks and Rec as opposed to developing another building.
Okay, thank you. And
Yeah.
Mason Center currently is being used for storage for like lacrosse stuff or something.
Correct. So a lot of our youth sports equipment that doesn't get used year round, it goes in there and then checked out for the season, and then also for some of the special events, some of the bikes or trailers that are used or whatever for parades and such are stored in the facility. So we would need to find an alternative place to store.
Do we
Yes,
have an alternative place?
We don't at this point, but again, I think just looking at it long term, that on Third Avenue does not feel like the right place for a storage unit for any.
For sure. Awesome. Thank you.
Yep.
And then I have sorry. Thank you. I'll do one more question and then I can come back to my other questions if other counselors give them a chance. This might be for you, would the parking area at Mason Center if we're envisioning this, I know this is super preliminary, could it be used, it won't be a private parking area for our staff, it could be used for events at Buckley or other things happening? Because I know that's a struggle sometimes with all the events at Buckley.
Yes, during the business hours, it would have to be strictly for our use, just so that we can make sure that we're meeting our parking requirement. But outside of that, in the evenings, holidays, events that the city offices aren't in operation, just similar to all of our other public parking, it could be open for anyone. Yes, ma'am.
Okay. And then the variance that we would be requiring for the transit center, it's 430 feet more than a quarter mile, which is like a third of a quarter mile or a quarter of a quarter mile or something like that, if I'm doing math right in my head.
That's
Am I
right.
about right?
Yep.
Are we talking about like changing our code? So we're building within what we're expecting everyone else to build within? Would we change the code, or are we talking about a variance just for us?
I'm not sure that we've gone forward
That far?
with those discussions that far.
Okay.
I think just kind of as we looked at this portion, I mean, there's two options still where we could ask for ourselves for a variance or we could change the land use development code, but we haven't really, I don't think, had too much in detail discussions
okay.
of which route to go through.
Yeah, I know it's preliminary. Just wanted to see if we had talked about that. And then from the transit center to the new city hall, could we have like transit systems put in place so we could help employees that don't want to walk that far or can't walk that far?
Yes, that would be something we could look into for sure.
Those are my starting questions, and then I might.
So the concern, and just to go to, a variance is not a change of the law. It's a variance from the law. So the concern you would have is if the city grants itself a variance, then it sets a precedence for granting that variance to other businesses in similar situations. So when you start talking about providing transportation outside of the variance, you might obligate yourself to do that for other business, which is fine. It's just that's the precedence you're setting.
How often do we grant variances for other businesses? Often, or
More of a Jamie
Depending
Oliver.
on like for parking or just in general?
I mean, parking. Let's talk about parking. I mean, I remember the Animus Brewing Company one. We had a variance there, but that was years ago.
Jamie Lopko, Community Development. We rarely have variances. I've seen 2 since I've been here, and 1 was denied. And we did have 1 for a parking variance, but it was a very unique circumstance for us to do that.
Okay, thank you.
Jamie, what was the parking modifications that we made for the Central Business District for change of use, or not for change? Can you remind me?
Yeah, we had it in place for central business, but we expanded it to Midtown. That would basically say if you had a change of use to a use that was allowed by right. So if a restaurant was allowed by right and it changed to a restaurant, you're not required to provide any additional parking than what is already there.
Okay.
But if you go to a limited use, a special use, or anything like that, you would then have to provide parking.
Great, thank you.
Councilor Grossley, you just want to keep rolling?
Yep. There's the Crossroads Mall below in the small shopping district. This seems to me to be unused parking that is much more convenient and not requiring variances that are with transportation applicable to other variances, et cetera, et cetera. So the discussion there, I understand that we don't want to broach a topic too early because prices may go up and et cetera, but I just don't know how we don't have this discussion to include the private parking that might be available for us to start counting as parking towards this project. Any comment on that or any research that's been done along those lines?
Yeah, we've compiled a list of potential parking spaces and property owners. We've had varying levels of conversations with some. We're not at a point where we could commit to saying where we are able to leverage any parking spaces through a shared use lease agreement or purchase agreement at this point. I think we'd be looking for council directive if you wanted to pursue those options further. But we do see still a lot of uncertainty if we were to proceed that route in order to satisfy the full 83 spaces.
And John, fair to say that you're looking for council not at the study session because we don't make decisions here, but at a soon to be a council session that we start eliminating some of the various options so that you can start getting into more detail on some of the ones that we might prefer?
That's mine.
Yeah, I think on this part is we're just satisfying the request from the council portion of it. I think when we're ready to have a recommendation, we would bring that as staff to council. Like we would recommend proceeding with option 1 for this project or option 2 and getting that at a later council meeting.
Okay. Have we had any polling of the staff to find out if they're interested in walking 7 minutes in the middle of January to work?
We have not done any polling.
Okay. The county has a parking lot at the old Schluter building just behind the old post office. This is a property that has made the most sense to me, at least over the long term. The development of that could be a benefit both to the county and the city since the convenience is there. We've got an alley access for an underground piece and a top access as well. So are there any initial hesitations to try and pursue something with a parking garage at that spot?
Probably be one for me. There's no hesitations to partnering with them. I think that's something that we've always been open for. I know it was a conversation that had happened previously with the previous county manager. I've had those conversations. I've expressed that the city still has interest in finding a possible way to partner if that happens. I think though, with the time frame in which we're looking to get this, as well as having funding for any type of potential construction from the city side, we would be very limited, if not maybe quite impossible for us to meet all of those to get it done by the time the building is ready to be opened.
Very possible to do something where we've got the option to use the transit center for temporary to bridge us to something that is a better solution down the line?
Yes, I don't know if because of the land use development code, I'm not sure we could call it temporary, but in our minds, we could say that's temporary until when that gets built, then we could definitely then move it on over.
It seems like it puts guardrails around perpetually having a transportation component and going a little outside of what we're requiring everybody else to deal with.
Absolutely. I think that there's some parts with this as well that we've talked about internally that I've discussed just with staff about providing possible incentives for employees not to bring a car. However, the part is with the land use development code, we still have to provide those parking spots, even though if we don't have employees doing that. So it's a give and take, but absolutely so.
And the potential revenue from the sale of the old City Hall and old PD spaces was or was not part of the construction costs and the estimates for construction on the old
We've
high school
included
site.
that when we first started at the very beginning of our preliminary, and we still have it in there if we were to sell. It is included as part of the project construction. Yes, sir.
4.3.
Correct.
Okay. Okay. Thank you.
Councilor Gonzalez?
Thank you. So can you remind me, was the underground parking eliminated for cost, or was there a fatal flaw in the design?
That was primarily driven by cost. Again, that was subject to the risk category 4 structural requirements of those to be used for police department parking. So
I'm sorry,
the
can you repeat that?
again, part of what was, yes, primarily due to cost. Again, then subject to risk category 4 structural requirements if used for police department functions.
What does that mean?
The parking garage structure that was originally planned included parking for the police department underground, and that was subject to risk category 4 structural requirements, which added cost as opposed to a standalone parking structure that was used for civilian purposes.
Okay, so just so I understand, a police department parking structure requires more reinforcements than if it were a city-owned parking structure?
That's correct.
Okay. And there's no potential to not put the police cars there and still make a parking structure and just not park?
That is, and I think we would show that as a city-led structure as part of this option 3 to help finance a parking structure, either on the City Hall PD site or elsewhere.
And so when you referenced number 3, let me get to number 3, option 3, would that give us all the spaces that were required?
That could, without discussing costs. Yes, I think the city could develop a parking structure that satisfies the required parking spaces. We just don't have any of those costs currently in the project budget.
Okay. And that still means that the other 2 structures that are currently being considered for parking are sold?
Yes. Yeah, we could look at, so option 3 as a standalone option would still consider the sale of the existing City Hall and police department site, and then pursuing a standalone structure financed separately or financed by the city is how we see that.
Okay.
The other option is partnering with other government agencies to help finance a parking structure.
Okay. And I know that perhaps should we, in the short term, decide to use those 2 facilities for parking, it's easy enough to use them for something else in the future. I think it's one of the, I don't know, I guess you could say positive sides of a parking lot is that it can easily be built upon and something else can be put there. I mean, I think that's the only positive thing I see about a surface level parking lot. It can be pretty easily sold and a structure built on it.
Yes.
Yeah, I think that's a fair statement.
Okay. I think that's all I have for the moment. I know that I guess what gives me some pause is like quite a large variance in the number of spaces required. I don't know, somehow seeing it here, the way that it's been presented, gives me a lot of pause. I mean, I know we've talked all along that there's not sufficient parking in the site, the way that it's being presented. Parking seems to be really like the issue in Durango and in cities all over the country is like, what do we do with parking that's so expensive to build and not that valuable for a community in terms of asset value. So I don't know, I hope we can come up with something that we can agree on. I feel like I don't love any of the options being presented, I guess is what I'm like. I feel sort of disappointed in our options that are presented now. Hopefully, as we continue on and really get precise on some of the numbers, we can come up with something that is a little better. So thank you.
Can I make sure that, I want to make sure that my comment about the variance didn't cause confusion. The variance that I understand being contemplated has nothing to do with the number of parking spaces required. It's just the distance that it is from City Hall. So it's an extra 400 feet that people would have to walk, that would be the variance. The actual number of parking spaces that the city is obligated to have, that's not, and you correct me if I'm wrong, Jose, but we're not requesting a variance from the actual number of spaces required to support the building.
That
It's
is
just
correct.
distance.
There's the only variance that, and I think kind of where this came from was if we could meet the parking requirements right now by utilizing the current PD and City Hall as parking lots, we would not need a variance. We would be done. However, there's been some interest, and there's interest from, I think, what I've heard from some members in the community as well as the council, of still wanting to sell these 2 lots. So if we wanted to sell these 2 lots, we still have the parking and able to meet the requirement. The variance just means is that it's outside of the quarter mile of where your parking should be. So the variance has nothing to do with regards to the parking spots. It has everything to do with the distance that that parking lot is from the building.
Okay, I think that's an important distinction. So.
Sorry if I caused confusion there.
Yeah, and I apologize if that was misrepresented on my side. Our intention is absolutely to satisfy the parking requirements. We just wanted to highlight the discrepancy between the number of spaces on site as currently designed and then the options to satisfy the full parking requirements.
I've got a couple of piecemeal questions, and maybe I guess we'll start with the Mason Center. So there currently are 14 spots available. Is that counting every single spot, or are there more spots currently available at the Mason Center?
That's currently counting every single spot.
Every single spot. So if we use that, then we leave no room for people using the tennis courts during daytime hours.
Correct. We're anticipating Monday through Friday, 8 to 5.
Okay. And then to demolish the existing structure, we could potentially get 28 spots. The existing structure is the storage, this makeshift storage facility. Do we have other storage available in other city-owned assets that this could transition to, or is this convenient because it's centrally located, or?
How big is your office, Scott?
I think the answer for that is we're still looking at facilities that are able to have that storage space. We think we can solve for that, the storage portion of it.
Okay.
That's not an issue for us. The portion really is demolishing the building and turning it into a parking lot. But as far as the storage space, we'll find a place to place the storage
Okay.
on it. We just also don't think it's the highest and best use. I think, as Scott said, to have our storage unit on 3rd Avenue.
Yep. Is this current storage space, is that historical, or is there any sort of was it part of the old Mason School? What is the history of this facility?
The gymnasium was part of the elementary school.
So it's a gymnasium.
The date, yep.
Okay.
So I don't remember the date that was transferred or sold to the city. Yes,
Yeah.
it is in bad shape.
Totally.
So the rest of the school was demolished in 2019.
Right. So it would cost tentatively $200,000 to demolish that facility to put in 14 more spots. Correct, John?
Based on our initial analysis, that's correct.
To demolish and then repave an additional 14 spaces, or just the demo?
That's just the hard costs we received from our CMGC partner on this site. That's not assuming there's any hazardous materials in the building. That would be additional costs. But yes, that is our preliminary estimate for the hard cost to demolish and pave 14 spaces.
And those 28 spots we would only create 14 more spots, and then we'd use all of those spots just like we were before, with no room, 8 to 5 Monday through Friday for users of the outdoor rec facilities. Correct?
That's our preliminary analysis, just based on the footprint of that gym building. I think there's further discussions to be had on whether we could squeeze in a few more parking spots in that site to allow for greater flexibility there.
Okay. Thank you. And then when we're looking at leveraging City Hall and the current PD lots, the 3.9 million and the 2.675, so roughly 6.5 million, that's just to convert those into parking lots that are not included in our current expenditures for this project, correct? That would be outside of the scope of what we're going to spend money on?
Correct.
Okay. Okay. And then maybe this next question is for Jamie, if you don't mind. Jamie, there is current currently in the LUDC, there is an allowance if we put bike racks in that accounts for X amount of parking spots. Is that correct? For certain businesses or maybe in certain areas?
There are a certain number of bike parking spots required for each use. And then if you go above and beyond that, there can be a reduction.
Is there a limit on how much of a reduction that could be?
I think it's 10%.
10%. So 10% of it. So we could potentially eliminate 16 spaces if we have enough bike parking. Is that am I reading that right?
Depends on which route we go. If we go straight up compliance with the LUDC, yes, we can do different reductions and pick and choose from that. If we went the route of doing, say, a parking study, we would have to comply with the parking study and no additional reductions could come forward.
Okay. I think probably a lot, Marty. Anybody? Will be riding their bikes. What's that? Yeah. Yeah. Okay. I was trying to figure out where some creative opportunities there could be, to try to pare some of this number down a little bit. That's all that I have currently. I will go on to Councilor Coso.
Just a couple of follow-ups. The council, I don't know about anybody else, but the optics of building a parking lot on 3rd Avenue just doesn't sit well with me at all. So the 14 spaces are
3rd Ave or 2nd Ave? Oh, 3rd Ave on the 14th.
with Mason, yeah. And there's other considerations that I think you've brought up as well on that. So is there anything here for a phased approach that it provides us the ability to sell one of the old properties, City Hall or PD, take the money from that sale and start working our way towards a parking garage or something that's a better option here? I believe that I've verified with the attorney that anything that's built off of the high school property is not part of the 61 million, not part of the bond. So we can't take any of the bond money and build anything that's off of that property. I have that correct?
That's correct, I believe, but that's my understanding.
Yeah,
as
the
well.
bond language says that all that money has to be spent on a city hall and a PD on adjacent facilities.
So we can't use any of the 61 million to build anything that's off of that property. The question then, and I'm fishing here, so I have no idea, but has there been any thought about trying to sell one piece of property at a time and to try and get the parking garage solved that way? Because the funding for the parking garage seems to be a huge hurdle, obviously. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I think I'll take that,
Yeah.
John, on that side. We've talked about it, but any sale of this project would go to the building. That's what we would need to continue to, as we're making our adjustments to the design of the building. It's not additional money. The sale of these properties had always been told to go into the building project, and that's kind of what we'd be looking to use it for. So even if we did sell one lot, we would look at still utilizing that funding to the total project cost of the building.
Is that part of the bond language or just something we've assumed we're going to do because that's how we've structured it so far?
Two separate things. If you look at kind of how we looked at how we were funding this through the presentations that we had done, was we would do the bond and that we could also have additional money for construction by selling these 2 lots.
To change that would require going back to the voters?
No, to change that would be going to the council. I mean, if the council didn't want to allocate that funding to the project,
Okay.
we would just need to know and make adjustments to the building.
Okay, great.
But technically on that note, can I, since I was next?
Yeah,
Sorry.
please go ahead.
Thank you. We originally, when we originally thought about selling these 2 pieces of property, we thought we were having a parking garage on that site, and now we don't. And so if it solves the problem of the parking garage, putting the money of one of the buildings or something towards another thing might make sense. I'm just going to throw that out there. If it helps the greater good.
Yeah, I mean, it still goes to the part of the budget is the budget, right? And
yeah,
so
I
that's
get-
that part.
With the
And so
funding somewhere.
yeah, this isn't I'm just trying to make sure the way it's communicated, it's not free money. This money has already been allocated in a budget to go to this project.
Yes.
So if the council wanted to, absolutely we could do that, but there would possibly be adjustments that needed to be made within the construction of the buildings.
Yes, I got that. Question, the 64 spaces that are available at the transit center, sorry, I have a few more questions that I forgot. Is that like just an average of like spaces that are generally available? Is it, these are always available 100% of the year? Do we know the answer to that? Sorry.
I was going to
Yeah,
say,
I
like, how
can-
do we
How
what
do
was the
qual-
formula?
Yeah.
Yeah, so this was in detailed conversations with staff that oversees parking at the transit center. Our understanding is they've got years of data that helped assess the vacancy rate.
Yeah.
So they, again, this is assuming 64 spaces on an average. I think you would see the most users of that parking lot is in July.
Yeah.
Is what we hear. So that I think that's when we would see maybe the greatest challenges to the 64 spaces, but
So that's my concern, is that there's already concern in the summertime with parking generally in the downtown area. Now, I'm a believer that every time I use the transit center in the summer, there's tons of spaces. So I'm not saying that you're wrong, but I'm saying I didn't know if the number was at the very highest peak, we have 64 spaces on, or if it's just an average. Because if it's an average in the summer, it's going to be less spaces available, which is going to cause some friction. My point is along kind of a little bit of what Kip was kind of alluding to is this like current idea of starting with something that makes sense in the short term, but then we have a vision and a plan for the long term. Now, you talk about the Schluter Floral parking space. When Old Main sells, depending on what they need and who's there could be an opportunity for, public-private partnership or whoever buys it to do a parking garage with them behind there. There could be an opportunity for a parking garage at the transit center like we've talked about, which is already slated and ready to kind of go in. I just am trying to think like, if we're doing this, we should, and we're going to do it in the short term, which I'm fine. Like I'm here for it. I would rather do that than hold these spaces hostage for it, because I don't think that's highest and best use. I don't think option 2 in my mind is highest and best use at all. Mason Center parking, I don't love turning more parking like area. However, the current parking area is a total disaster and a mess. And I think that if we did it smart, it could service Buckley Park and Mason Center better, and then utilize us for the short term potentially. And then there's a long-term gain. But then it just brings us back to the question, if we're going to build a parking garage, we need to say like we can't afford it on our own, so we're going to have to go with a partnership, because if we can afford it on our own, why would we not just put it there? Does that make sense? Like where we're already planning.
Yes, I would say that, from my angle, the best scenario is partnering with the county and building a parking garage right there. I mean, that's absolutely the perfect scenario. I think it works in a lot of different ways, and I'm not trying to talk to the county and speak for them, but I do think they have needs, and I think that's absolutely long-term, bam, that's how it works. That's just going to take time for us to have the funding and them to have the funding, and if that's a decision they want to do with that property. And then once that happens, I think all of this then begins to go away. So kind of as I look at all of it, all of these are really temporary. They don't lock you into anything of like, this will be our parking forever and ever. I think there's always those discussions that we can have to say, no, our intention is to do a parking garage at some point, either here or there. And that's the long-term goal. But right now, this is how we satisfy those needs.
And then anything with Mason Center, it's such a jewel, like just like Buckley Park, like it's such a jewel of our community. Like there will have to be crazy outreach and community engagement. Yes, if we're going to do anything different over in that area, and like talking to, how can we make it better, not just serve our needs?
Sure. Absolutely. I mean, and I think that for the council, this was kind of where a response to the need for information for you all to see kind of where we're thinking. But I think there's still, every one of these options still has more to work on to get to a final part. That's why we're not providing you a recommendation yet. But these study sessions do help us kind of gauge where maybe some concerns are or some thoughts are from the council. So before we come with a recommendation, we've kind of at least had a little bit of an opening dialogue with you all.
And then there was a comment made, and I just want to make sure, because I believe we did abatement at the Mason Center already, correct? When we demoed some, and then that was already done, correct? Because I heard someone made a comment about that, and I feel like we did it already, correct?
There was asbestos abatement completed for the portions that were demoed. So
That's the demo, not the
correct. So
current
gymnasium,
building.
we would need to look into that.
Great, thanks.
My only last question was, and maybe it's for you, Jose. So we're using potentially the sale of the current PD in City Hall to offset the cost of the new PD in City Hall. When you say go to the building, is there an anticipated budget with that in terms of like how that offsets? And then what happens if we don't sell one? What do we give up in the facility potentially?
Yeah, so all of those things are here, and I want to make sure that it's clear that from the beginning, from the very beginning of the presentation, this was always the plan. We would sell these 2 plots, and that money would go into the building. We have been having these conversations as we continue with 30 and 60% design as we're getting through it, as to if we don't sell these, what then do we have to take away from the building? But we're not complete with design yet, so I don't have that answer for you to say these are what would be taken away. Right now, we are seeing a comfortability level of, can we still find a way to sell these by using other parking areas to go through?
Okay. I wonder, maybe to your point, Kip, I don't necessarily want to see more parking on Third Ave, but I did some quick math. If we use 78 at the current or at the on-site of the new PD City Hall, we'll use 64 at what is it? At the transit center. Thank you. And then if we have 14 at the Mason Center, that gives us 156 with potentially some bike racks to get us down to that number. What would you have any sort of conversation around if we double the parking at the Mason Center with that 28 and then keep 14 for potentially other people to use that facility or use the asset, and then 14 would go strictly towards the new PD City Hall. So then that way we're getting us close. We're still providing parking for others to be able to use the assets downtown. So maybe that could potentially be an option. But do I love the idea of making a new parking spot? No, but I'm trying to think of like, how can we make this best work?
I didn't quite understand. Are you talking about that as a temporary solution and then those parking spaces at Mason turn back into community use?
Yeah, if that would be the temporary use, I would, the only thing that I would say is that I warn against the use of the word temporary just because the PD was temporarily used for 62 years. So I really want to make sure that whatever we're doing, there's a vision and an expectation that we are going to continue to plod forward and finding the permanent solution. And so, yeah, I would anticipate that would go back to public use, and we, that the only reason I say that there's 14 spots available, I dropped my kid off for Devo, during the summer for Devo summer camps all week. And that parking lot for that 30 minutes with kids dropping off gets chaotic and full and kids riding their bikes. And if all of a sudden all those spots are full and we're dropping kids off, they're going to have to either find an ancillary place to do that, or it's just going to be too congested and it might become unsafe. I don't know. I'm just trying to think of like whatever we can do to eventually find some sort of wiggle room wherever we can.
I'm just going to caution everybody to not commit to positions.
No. I'm just trying to talk about ideas,
Yeah.
of.
No, it's been great so far, but that one seemed like it might be soliciting a commitment from one of your.
No. I apologize if that was coming across that way. I was just trying to figure out creative use of these facilities that we have to try to create or try to get to the number that we need. Any other questions or comments from council? Gilda.
Well, thank you, John. You presented exactly what I was intending, that we look at the parking situation since we hit a little roadblock. And I do appreciate all the work you have completed to give us all these options. And then there's also other ideas here that can fuel our conversation, but thank you so much. I appreciate it.
Thank you.
All right. Thank you very much, Sean.
Okay.
Appreciate your time.
Thank you all.
All right. Moving on to section 3, staff presentations.
Good afternoon, Mayor, City Council. I'm Bob Brammer, Assistant City Manager. And today's presentation is an executive summary with the topic of Durango Fire Service consolidation history and potential future considerations by the council. This presentation aligns primarily with our strategic plan of safety and quality of life. And first, I'm going to give an overall history of the Durango Fire Protection District and how it came to be and how we entered into a contract with them several years ago. So fire service collaboration in Durango area began in 1996 when the City of Durango, Animas Fire Protection District, and Hermosa Cliffs Fire Protection District initiated formal studies to evaluate the most effective and sustainable model for delivering emergency services. These analyses consistently demonstrated that a unified system would improve response capabilities, increase operational efficiency, and reduce long-term costs. This work led to the formation of the Durango Fire Rescue Authority, or DFRA, which began operations in January 1st of 2002, marking the first major step in consolidation. This agreement was unanimously approved by all participating agencies. At the same time, Mercy Hospital integrated its ambulance service into DFRA, enhancing pre-hospital medical care across the region. From the outset, the regional leadership identified a single governmental entity as the most sustainable long-term solution. In 2006, voters approved a creation of Durango Fire Protection District, or DFPD, as is currently known. However, the necessary funding mechanism, a mill levy, was not approved. A second attempt in 2011 also failed, primarily due to the concerns from city residents and businesses about transitioning from a sales tax supported model to a new property tax. In response, stakeholders developed a revised approach. In 2012, the City of Durango was excluded from the district boundaries, but entered into a long-term service agreement funded through the General Sales Tax Fund. This allowed the remaining district voters to consider a mill levy independently of the district. In November of 2013, this strategy succeeded, and district voters approved the mill levy, and city voters approved a 15-year service agreement. On January 1st, 2014, DFPD officially began operations as a single provider of fire and emergency services, completing an 18-year transition from concept to full operational consolidation. The legacy districts were then formally dissolved shortly thereafter. So currently, the district residents pay an approximately 12.65 mils for fire services, while city residents contribute approximately 8.537 mils from collected sales tax and from property tax, and another 3.7521 mil equivalent from the general fund sales tax in subsidy. Inclusion of the district would require an additional 3.7521 mils from the city residents, creating parity while eliminating the need for a city subsidy, freeing up about $3 million in the general fund to be allocated for other programs like police, transit, or housing, for example. In 2005, the city procured the services of Matrix Consulting Group to evaluate the services rendered by the city from the contract with the Durango Fire Protection District, evaluate the options and continue service past the expiration date of the service agreement, which expires on December 31st, 2028. The full scope of the evaluation is also included in your packet, and the recommendations by Matrix Consulting included these three options right here. One is a contract renewal. That does have an estimated increase to the city's contribution to either $15 million or $18 million annually, and that depends on the methodology that's adopted at the time for the new contract. One would be a service rendered model, the other would be based off of population. And why is this important? It's because of the amount of service demand within the city limits in 2004 is the numbers I have. So if you look at the total calls for service that the district has, in 2024, they had 6,469 calls for service, with 4,722 occurring within the city limits and 1,747 outside of the city limits. And if we go with a population-based contract, the city accounts for about 60.6% of the district's population and consumes about 67.8% of the overall call volume for the fire district at this time. Second option is the creation of a municipal fire department with an initial startup cost of about $86 million to purchase the infrastructure, equipment, and hiring of personnel, with an annual operating cost of about $11 million annually, or annexation into the fire district, which would require a vote for the city residents. And that's really the topic for today. So also included in your packet in much greater detail are the specifications of each one of the elections that I've outlined here. This is just a general overview of what the details of each one of these elections are and the dates that would be required to either notify the county clerk for upcoming elections within the time period of the contract that we currently have. If the council decides to move forward with the future election to consider a ballot question to annex into the district, the structure will be determined at a later date. Also for the council to consider are several key lessons that we have learned over past election attempts and previous efforts to fully unify governance, and the funding were hindered by an unclear communication with the voters, particularly regarding how city general fund revenues would be reallocated under the district funding model. This uncertainty with the voters contributed significantly to voter resistance. And other considerations are any future effort to include the city within DFPD boundaries will depend on two critical factors. One is clear financial communication. We as a city must articulate how the general fund resources would be repurposed in a way that benefits our residents. And two, the demonstration of the value of inclusion. And there's multiple areas in this, but some of the highlighted ones are inclusion provides governance and participation on the fire board to include voting rights and board representation, and aligns the funding equity across all of the different service recipients within the district itself. At this point, I'm here to answer any further questions that you may have.
Councilor Christo.
Bob, that was a blizzard of numbers. Thank you for that. So I was thinking that I would have the pleasure of grilling Chief Black on this one. So some of these questions I just may need to get answers from him on. The report was great. I appreciate that. But I have some questions on salary increases over the last couple of years. I think that's his question, correct? And
It
as
is.
well as
My
reserve funds.
understanding is they model their salary structure based off of what ours is. They actually use the same consultant, but they try to create that so there's not parity between our two different agencies.
So I'm sorry, does that answer if I should ask him about the budgeting? There's 25% salary increase from 2022 to 2025. Is that a question for him?
The compensation studies that they did.
Okay.
I don't have specific details on how that occurred,
Okay.
but I know they used the same consultant as we did, and their goal was to align with our police department because of this, the relationship with the structure.
So I worry that I'm going down a rabbit hole here, but is there a worry that 25% increases every 3 years is what we'd be looking at?
If we go as far as like well, I guess the real question is like what model do we want to go with?
Yeah. Okay.
Do we want to include in the district? Do we want to try to continue to potentially buy a fire department, or are we going to extend our contract at some level?
Yeah.
So those are really the future considerations of the council to decide on which structure it's going to go to. But if we do decide to go down the road of districting and going into the district, that's what today's conversation is about, is which we'd have to move to a new business item, obviously, for a council decision, but then to decide which election option is going to be the result of that.
Okay.
Right now, the consultant is recommending that we try to annex into the district itself.
Establishing our own fire district, municipal fire department is insane to me. So I don't know if we can just start dropping that out of all the mix of this, but it does seem to clutter what we're talking about from my perspective, at least. So I'll throw that out there. Okay, so I think I'm going to avoid some of the financial questions because I think I can ask those of Chief Black. What are the costs to the commercial businesses for the proposed move into the district then? So I believe the commercial districts would be paying the vast majority of this cost.
I don't have a specific breakdown on what that is. Finance would have to help me break that down, but obviously the businesses, I think they pay, I want to say upwards of 29 mils or so compared to the residential mill, which is much less than that.
Yeah. So getting those numbers would be very interesting for my perspective. I think some discussion on ways that we blunt the tax impact on our commercial businesses that would happen with a move into the district because we've just freed up some general funds. How do we discount other costs to those commercial businesses to help blunt the tax increase that would happen to them? I think there's some element there that I would love to have some discussion on too. I don't know about the rest of council. That's just one counselor. And then is there an election timeline preference or suggestion that you've got related to the fact that if it passes, no problem. If it doesn't pass, we need time to have plan B on whatever we're going to do. Does that make sense?
Absolutely. And so I think the April 27 ballot would probably be the best, speaking with everybody involved, to include the county clerk and our finance or our clerk as well. So it just seems less clutter. It's not November, it's in the spring. I talked to Tiffany yesterday. She believed that, the spring elections on an odd year are probably the best option for us as a municipality.
Is there merit in having a option B if it doesn't pass under an election discussion as we go along? Or do you think if it didn't pass in the April election, we'd have enough time to figure out what option B is?
Well, I think that would be the decision by council. If we went out in April of 27, and if say we fail, then we have 2 more shots at an election if we want to try to revamp the language for a ballot and or move into a modified contract. But we know that the allocated costs of that are going to be much more extreme, and we're going to have to find that money somewhere.
Okay, thanks. That's what I was looking for. Thank you.
Councilor Gonzalez.
Thank you. So I'm a little confused. So perhaps you can get me some clarity. So either way, the voters have to approve something in November.
No, only if we go to inclusion into the district through annexation. That would be the only way. If we decide to do our own fire department, if we decide to go with a contract, those would be issues that the council would have to decide on. And those would be the negotiations we would have to work into with the district to either purchase a department at an extreme amount of cost, which as you can see is very high, or a modified contract, which would extend the services. But again, those costs would escalate based off of our service usage and our population as compared to the rest of the district. So I think those would be some of the considerations to look into.
And given, I don't know, you do show a timeline here. So if we then as a council would just decide we want to go ahead and continue under the same program process that we've been using, we could just continue to do that with a vote of this council before November?
Well, so the contract expires December 31st of 2028. So if we're going to enter into a new contract, we would need direction from the council to proceed with those negotiations at that time.
Before 28. Okay. Okay. So, and then the other question I wanted to ask, is there like community satisfaction surveys? Do people feel like the current system is serving them well?
As far as the contract with the city and not being included in the district?
Or no, just their satisfaction of the services they provide?
That would have to be a question for Chief Black, since they're an outside agency and we contract to them.
Okay, so we don't have that. We wouldn't conduct that survey or information or anything.
No, but I'm sure Chief Black could probably answer the question for you.
Okay. I guess I understand, trying to bring or create a city-owned department would be quite an arduous process. What happens to the existing facilities? Do we have to buy them? Do we buy equipment from them, or what would that look like?
If we decided to create our own Durango Fire Department, we would have to buy their stations. The consulting group identified, I think, 3 stations within the city to be able to provide the level of service that they currently experience. We'd have to buy all the fire trucks. We'd have to buy all the equipment that's associated to that. And then we would have to hire the personnel from the fire department, plus provide them benefits, all the other things go along with it. And that's what that $86 million price tag is taking into consideration.
Okay. Okay. I think that's all I have. Thank you.
Councilor Lawyer.
Yeah, I did want to say 2 years ago, we had a huge study session with the fire department and us where we were sat there for 2 hours. And I think a lot of the salary questions and the survey questions, they had all that presented. We were there for hours, I feel like. And so I'm sure if you reached out to Randy, he would send maybe the presentation. They had a full presentation with a lot of that, because there was I asked a lot of questions about salary stuff too during that one. So just wanted to throw that out there. I agree with Councilor Coso, this talk of us continuing to start our own fire department is like, but I will say that we had a counselor previously that insisted that we looked at that option. And so I think that like saying that we have, and, you know, I think that I agree. It does muddy the waters.
They said it was going to be $5 million too.
Yeah. Yeah. Anyways, I just wanted to say that, okay, we listened and we heard, and now we're moving on because that doesn't seem to be like a viable option for the city, obviously, financially. I think one of the biggest things is we have a potential of 4 elections that we could go after this mill levy for. Not that we would ever do 4, obviously. I think it's important that we have a communication plan to ensure that voters understand the whole, it's a big topic, right? We used to have the fire department in the city and then we didn't, and we don't have a vote on the board, and this is how we can change it. It's going to be, the last presentation we gave, it was a phased approach to the mill levy, correct? That we would not, it's not like we're just going to like put the whole charge at them, correct?
That's correct. Yes.
That was like a tier, like that would need to be communicated.
That was a recommendation that came from Matrix as well. I mean,
Yeah.
there's a lot of ways to skin this cat. If we do go forth and we do want to, if the council does provide us direction to go forth with an election in order to get into the district, there's lots of structural mechanisms that we can do. We just haven't had that conversation yet of what that could be. So again, that would have to be something we'd have to come back on, and that would be in the ballot language specifically. So we would have to come up with what that ballot language is, that structure, so on and so forth, once to get the voter approval to get within the annexation of the district.
The last time we had a conversation about this, it was a study session or was it in a council meeting?
Oh,
It's a
study
city-
session. We've had kind of 2 conversations about this. This are the parts
About
of
10.
what's out there for this council that are going to be major financial decisions that need to be made.
Right.
This is one, and then you still had like transit, and you had housing, and then we have our water and sewer infrastructure. So this one is just one that the clock is ticking.
Yeah.
There's nothing that any of us can do at the end of December 31 of 2028. Our contract's out. So we've
And-
got to make some sort of decision.
Yeah.
This isn't one right now where we're asking you for, but it's just kind of just like, hey, here's a little bit of a reminder. This is still here. And we probably looks like maybe the April 27 is something that we can, not asking for y'all to concur or anything on that, but more of a reasonable date for us to maybe look at a first try and maybe begin to start kind of building something for staff to keep bringing back updates of what that might look like.
I thought it was a council meeting. We made a decision, so I was confused, but clearly not. I've made
No,
that
ma'am.
up in my head.
No,
Okay,
no
great.
decision made.
And then if we decide, like Councilor Gonzalez was talking about, if we decide we're not going to go to election, we're going to just renew the contract will go up, correct?
It's anticipated, yes.
I mean,
from the
Randy-
conversations I've had, yes.
Yeah, he made it very clear, I think, in one meeting sometime that we've had that the current $9 million is not the rate that it would be.
Do you
if
have that
we
on a
renewed
slide?
it.
I thought you did.
So I've got a breakdown on it. And so if we, because right now we're paying about $9 million.
Yeah.
That's going to go up, because the assessed values, so it's going to go up to probably $11 million.
Okay.
And then, and then if we do a modified contract, that's the slide I referenced earlier, that would be the $15 to $18 million. So these are kind of the options that are out there right now.
All right. Thank you.
Like Councilor Coso, I would like to know the decision, if whatever decision we make and what the commercial property impact, but like, I also want to know what the homeowner impact is, for, average, and then kind of what that means for folks in our community, in terms of what they're gonna have to pay out on a 6-month and yearly basis. And then say we get the worst case scenario, we go to ballot November of 2028, it doesn't pass. Do we leave ourselves enough room to get a contract signed, the ink is dried, and something in place before December 31st?
If we're waiting till 28, it's going to be tight. Hopefully we'll have done the work previous to that as kind of a plan B. It would be my suggestion on that one. That's why I'm suggesting probably the April 27 for a ballot. That way it gives us more time to work through their board, the council, through our attorneys to come up with something that may be reasonable in that area. But right now, if we do go into the annexation, the per capita cost per resident is actually less than it would be if we continue to go with a modified contract with the results of the consultant that provided those numbers to us.
Okay, great. Thanks so much, Bob. Any other questions or comments? Excellent. Thank you.
Just a side question. Do we have this planned to be kind of coming back in front of us every 3 months, every 6 months, get Chief Black in here. I just would love an idea of cadence.
Sure. Do we have anything formalized? No, this is kind of just a friendly reminder for the council that this is here. I think one of the parts of it, just trying to see if we've missed the November 26th portion of it. I don't think anyone's itching to go that fast.
Yeah.
So I think we'll look at the April and then present to a plan for council of here's how we could see April working, and here's how maybe we have a joint meeting with DFPD and have another presentation and kind of start being able to plan that out.
Okay. Thank you.
And we'd have to make notification to the county by December 11th, I believe, if we're going to do an April initiative.
Great. Thanks, Bob. All right, moving on to 3.2 with parking.
Good afternoon, Mayor, City Councilors. Thank you for having us. I'm Tracy Schronger, Parking Operations Manager.
And I'm Hunter Yokes, Lead Customer Service Specialist.
And we fall under reliable infrastructure and community and connectivity, and we're here to give an update on some of our current programs and parking division goals. And first up is our peak demand meter pricing. 'Tis the season. We are now in that window, which started on May 1st and will end on October 31st. Since 2020, we've been doing audits on a weekly basis to assess the compliance of the meter. This count also gives us a basis on occupancy during our busiest time of day, which is our lunch hour. Since our adoption of the Comprehensive Parking Management Plan in 2022, we needed to address increasing the rates at the meter to redistribute parking to underutilized areas. We received council approval to increase the hourly rate of 25 cents annually based on occupancy over 80%. 80% is our baseline for justifying an increase by block. We are capped on our increase of $1.50 an hour. Based on what we are seeing, this rate of $1.50 an hour isn't a big enough impact to redistribute that occupancy at other blocks. And this map gives you our current hourly rates as they are right now. And as you can see, the sections in blue are $1.50 hourly rate. And then our lowest rate is 50 cents an hour. Some locations have never changed or received an increase. And I will pass it off to Hunter to give an update on our data collection.
So our vacancy rate data collection is data dating back to 2013. The collection times of the data were historically at 9 a.m., 10 a.m., 1 p.m., and 2 p.m. This year for 2026, we've changed the collection times to include a later 4:30 p.m. timeframe. The goal is with that 4:30 p.m. data collection timeframe, we can start to collect data for the evenings and get a clearer picture of what both downtown and the neighborhoods look like. This year, we are changing the percentage categories and reporting for the VRDC map for better clarity on what the parking situation is looking like. So we're going to change the percentage categories on the map. The new changes will show more accurate and detailed data and is in better alignment with our parking management plan. The major change is coming from defining capacity at 85% rather than 90%. So this shows our March 2025 VRDC map and compares the old versus new percentages. On the left, we have the old, and on the right, we have the new measurements moving forward. The numbers used for the data are the same, but we believe the new reporting portrays a much more accurate visualization of the parking situation in Durango. The old percentage categories measured available parking spaces, and they would define capacity at anything greater than 90%. Close to capacity was 11% to 25%. And easy to find available parking in the green was defined as anywhere from 26% to 100% available. So for VRDC in 2026, we're starting by defining what we seek to capture. We're going to change the term available to occupied. We think this is more useful in understanding where people are parking. Next, we've redefined our percentage categories in alignment with the parking management plan, which defines effective capacity at anything greater than 85% occupied. We've then added another bucket to capture those areas that are close to and approaching effective capacity, which we're highlighting in orange. We think the addition of this allows us to better track trends and be proactive in understanding the parking situation. I think it's important to note that the lower boundary of our orange distinction, so anywhere from 70 to 74% occupied, would have been green on the previous maps. Next, we have yellow effectively showing that half to 69% occupied range, and anything under half occupied is green, meaning you can find parking no problem. And here's Tracy to talk about our mobile payment.
Thank you. We partnered with Park Mobile last year, and we just had our 1-year anniversary on March 31st with our mobile payment integration. The payment option is available at all metered locations as well as the transit center for $5 a day. The visual graph shows an annual income from payments at the meter versus payments annually income for 2025, comparing apples to apples from April to December. The use of mobile payments has been pretty steady with almost 11% usage with locals and visitors versus payment at the meter. We hear often from locals that they prefer this payment method option as it's more convenient, easy to use, and they have less stress of not having to rush back and finding a ticket on their window. At this time, it's a big hit with the locals. And I'll kick it back over to Hunter.
So next we wanted to talk a little bit about how parking defines success as a department. This is some of our behind the scenes work that doesn't necessarily get seen, but demonstrates why understanding these areas leads to decisions that are strategic and align with our Trails to Excellence initiative. So we're currently in the process of creating a Power BI parking dashboard that utilizes all of our data tracking and can help us portray and define success within the department. Here are some KPIs that we currently track as well as areas we are seeking to track. So here's an example of that process. So by understanding the utilization and demand KPI, we can start to track trends through our occupancy rate data. This helps us identify underused and overcongested areas. By being able to identify trends within the data, we can shift to proactive decision-making rather than being reactionary. So defining success within this goal would be to disperse parking throughout the central business district and manage that 85% occupancy rate as capacity. And then here's Tracy to talk about our permit program.
Thank you. So we have a new pilot program, Downtown Employee Parking Permit Program. Over the years, we've been hearing from locals that we needed to offer more affordable parking options for downtown workers. Without the support of City Council and approval to subsidize the program with lodger's tax, this program would not have been as successful. The main attraction is the lower cost to locals, additional locations other than the lots, and passes are transferable between the employees. In 2025, we had 98 unique businesses who participated in the program from May to December with 1,392 monthly permits purchased. And 2026 kicked off with many of the same businesses from the previous year, with the program amounting to 100 unique businesses with 2,100 monthly permits purchased so far this year, a 33% increase from 2025 in just 4 months. This program has been the most attractive and popular permit option of the others we offer. It's definitely a home run with the locals. And just an update on our wayfinding signage plan. Bless you. And this is our newest project. Thank you, City Council. We received the funding and approval to put out an RFP for a wayfinding signage plan. And we are excited about this project, and we think that our community will greatly benefit with updated signage and can greatly reduce congestion and confusion downtown. Our parking layout and signage is currently difficult to navigate for both first-time users, visitors, and long-time residents. Public parking locations are not clearly identified, resulting in driver frustration, inefficient circulating, and spillover into the neighborhoods. We want to achieve a well thought out and executable plan. And here is kind of a timeline of what this plan is. We are currently in the decision process of selecting a consultant and selecting a project team for this project. We're looking to have a kickoff meeting in June with public engagement in the fall, and an estimate of about 8 months from start to finish. The final product will be a bid ready with phased implementation plan and a couple of sample products to choose from. And that concludes our presentation for today. Everything that we presented on is in alignment with our parking management plan. And with that, I'll give it up with questions if anybody has any.
Thanks very much. Councilor Koso.
Tracy, thanks. Appreciate you guys giving the presentation. So it seems like the $1.50, the increase hasn't necessarily changed behavior. So any indication that $2 is going to make a difference, $2.50, or do you feel like there's not a necessarily a price sensitivity to getting people to move to lower used spaces?
I think there's definitely a cost associated with that. What that price point is, we haven't hit that capacity yet.
Okay. So if $1.50 hasn't worked to try and move something, we're probably going to have to talk about moving it up.
Correct.
$2, something along
Yes.
those lines. Okay. Is there a discount for using the mobile versus the coins? And is it much easier for your department to deal with the mobile? I think that's a yes, but rather than collecting coins. But is there any discount, or have we ever talked about?
There is no additional discount with mobile payment. It is actually a 40 cent charge to the user.
Okay.
So it is a convenience fee.
No matter if I put in for an hour or 2 hours, I'm also paying 40 cents on top of that. That goes to the app developer or whatever?
Correct.
Okay. Okay. Is it better for you to have mobile use or coins?
Absolutely. Mobile is
Mobile's way better no matter what. Okay, great.
Yes.
Revenue loss for employee parking program. Has there been any kind of computation of, has that benefit far outweighed what the cost is to budget?
We have not seen a decrease in revenue so far.
Okay.
But I don't have the hard numbers at this moment.
So it's been a win-win so far.
Absolutely.
Okay, good. And last, any thoughts around before or after measurements for the wayfinding? Would love to, in some way, shape, or form, feel like we've implemented brand new wayfinding for hundreds of thousands of dollars, and we actually had some measurements to sit there and say it improved things.
Absolutely. Yeah, that would be our measurement of success.
Okay.
Is seeing a change and impact, and that is part of our request with the consultants as well. Is
Okay.
helping us
How to
define
measure
that.
before and then
Absolutely.
gauge success after. Great. Thank you very much.
Mayor Pro Tem Lawyer.
Yeah. Couple questions or thoughts first. The employee downtown parking program, I've heard nothing but amazing things about it. Thank you guys so much for doing that. I love the increased numbers, so that's great. And then the app mobile parking. Have you noticed that more locals are using it? Has that 11% increase keeps increasing, or has it just been 11% across the board since we started it?
Well, we are in our first year, so we don't have a huge baseline, but it is it's kind of fluctuated with the season.
Yeah.
But we haven't seen a spike at all.
Have
We started at about 8% use.
Have we done some like press releases to locals about it? Like, I know the first time I used it, I was trying to like get it all together. This was a while ago and it took me forever. And then I got irritated. And so I just put my credit card on the machine. And then once I like sat down and like uploaded my information and put my license plate in, like it is the best thing ever. Like it gives you like a notice, like you have 10 minutes left. I'm like, ooh, do you want to add 50 cents? Yes, please. Like, it's like the best thing. I don't have to run out. I love it. But in that moment, when I was rushing, I couldn't download it. Does that make sense? Like, have you reached out to locals?
Yes, it does. We did not do anything other than put any information out on our website. We do
should do
branding
that.
on every single meter, though.
We should release some information, Tom.
We did work
Yeah,
with
all
BID.
right.
Yeah,
I was
we
talking
did.
in between you. Sorry.
We did work with BID when we rolled out the program, who worked with local businesses as well.
Cool. Last summer, I think it was, maybe it was 2 summers ago. I don't even know now. We did free parking on like the narrow gauge and some of the underutilized stuff. Are we doing that again this year? Or no?
No, we did not do that this year, but the employee permit program was kind of in place at that.
Yeah. Okay, perfect. And then I remember when we got the parking plan, whatever it's called, comprehensive study out, there was like 7 quick wins, right? That we could like, or 6, or I don't remember the exact number of it. And I remember the neighborhood parking program, which did not stick. That's okay. We tried. But then the app was one of them, the wayfinding signage, which sounds like we're doing now, which is great. Is there anything else on there that we're implementing that we've done that's working or not? Do you remember?
There are some other options we're looking into, but there are some restrictions within our contracts at the
Okay.
moment.
All right. Thank you.
Great. Any other questions or comments by council? All right. Thank you both so much.
Thank you.
Appreciate it. All right. On to 3.3, Ms. Lopko.
All right. Good afternoon. Jamie Lopko for Community Development. I wanted to kind of give you an introduction to our comprehensive plan, knowing that it's imminent where we're going to be rewriting our comprehensive plan and coming before you again. So I wanted to kind of give you an update on what is a comprehensive plan and how we utilize that. So our comprehensive plan is designed to support and complement our strategic plan. So it does complement all of the elements of our goal plan. And so what is a comprehensive plan? Word to cloud is kind of all of the ideas people throw out there of what a comprehensive plan is going to cover. But it really is, it's a long range plan for the city. It's supposed to capture our vision, but it's supposed to be of where we want to be at some point in the future. It's meant to identify our growth of where we want to go. So the term comprehensive suggests it's supposed to be all-inclusive, analyzing, evaluating future growth. Sometimes it's referred to as a master plan or a general plan in other communities. It lays the groundwork for our land use and development code and supports coordinated and sustainable decision-making. So it's considered an advisory document rather than strictly binding regulations like our land use code is. So its purpose. Its principal purpose is to guide the achievement of goals and aspirations. It's supposed to be a blueprint of our future development, our preservation of the community, and some of the key purposes are guiding development. It's meant to be a roadmap for orderly growth, ensuring that new development aligns with our community's vision. A legal basis for our zoning. It does serve as a foundation for our zoning, our subdivision, our land use regulations. Community visioning, it's going to incorporate extensive public interest input to help us set those long-term goals for our community's growth. Infrastructure and funding, it can be used to support capital improvements as well as grant applications. And then regulatory compliance. There are some things that will come down from the state that we are required to include in this. So relationship to the strategic plan. The comprehensive plan is long-term. It's going to look out 10, 20 plus years. It's wide-ranging, looking at all the community systems that will include and touch on housing and land use and transportation, infrastructure, long-term growth, establishes big picture vision and policy direction for our growth. Whereas a strategic plan is a shorter term, usually 1 to 5 years. It's going to focus on more specific targets or things that are priorities that have and has clear action or direction behind it. So from our strategic plan, it says it outlines objectives influencing our budget process, guiding implementation of city services, set priorities that align with the organizational strategy, motivate energy, resources, and well-being, strengthen operations, ensure organization is working to achieve goals, mission, vision, and values to best serve the Durango community. So they're going to kind of work in complementary, in conjunction with one another. So let's look at the requirements. The state of Colorado Department of Local Affairs does require municipalities with a population of 2,000 or more to have a general comprehensive plan for land use. So this slide is going to show you both what's required and recommended from the state. The top row, your future land use 3-mile plan, water supply, strategic growth, and housing are required things that we have to cover. The community-driven engagement, hazard mitigation, water quality and action plan are things that are recommended to be included. So within each of our elements or chapters of the comprehensive plan, we'll have goals, objectives, and policies. So we'll have a goal of what is trying to be achieved, objective of how these issues can be addressed to achieve the desired results, and then our policies of the more specific steps of how we get in to address those issues. But in addition to that, we will have maps in there. That's where our future land use map is, and that is where we look at our densities of how much we want to have in our growth. And so as part of this, we do look at growth scenarios of where do we want to go? How would this impact our infrastructure? And so that'll be part of the process when we look at updating our future land use and 3 Mile Plan. And the 3 Mile Plan is a requirement that we look at 3 miles outside the existing boundary of the city and also include that in our land use map in case we want to annex those areas. So our current plan was adopted in 2017, contains all the elements that are listed on the slide, as well as our 3 Mile Plan and future land use map. And so staff uses this as a guide when reviewing development proposals within the city as well as in our joint planning area. So comprehensive plans are supposed to be reviewed every 5 years and updated or rewritten about every 10. So we're coming up on 10 years. So at this point, we are looking at doing a full update or rewrite of our comprehensive plan. So we have conducted an RFP and we actually selected a consultant yesterday. So we will be moving forward with that. And it will include, we've given them a lot of topics to include within that. There won't be all of these chapters. We will combine them in certain areas, but I wanted to give you an idea of all the things that we're going to try to touch on and bring together within the comprehensive plan. So this is the phases that we were looking at. It kind of lays out the proposed process and timeline that we're looking at. We will have a kickoff with the consultant in the near future. We'll give them some background, our other plans. They'll begin reviewing that in the process. And then the community engagement plan will be one of the big first steps that we do with them, looking at what initiatives we want to have and where we want to have those within the timeline. But phase 2 of that is going to be running the growth scenarios of where we want to go. And then we do have a state requirement for a water supply and smart growth. Those are new things that are required. Those are not currently within our code. And technically those are required by the end of 2026. So our initial intent was bring forward the strategic, the smart growth and the water supply by the end of 26, and then round out into 27 for the full plan. We have recently found out that we can work with the state and the consultant to be able to still do it in one full initiative, and the state will allow us to roll into 27 as long as we're working on those elements to make it a more cohesive process. So I would envision us probably doing the one full process instead of coming to you by the end of 26 with 2 elements and then coming back to you with a full plan on 27. So that's the intent of where we are with the plan. Community engagement wise, we have a lot of opportunities for this with public workshops. We are planning to do a lot on the front end to inform people, to get ideas of where they want things to head, to make sure we're including that in our growth scenarios. We do have the Engage Durango website. It will have its own dedicated page for that. But we'll have online engagement opportunities. We'll post documents on there for people to be able to review where we are in the process. We'll be out at the farmers market and other pop-up events, social media, open houses, and of course, Community Development Commission and Council. The process for the actual formal adoption is going to the Community Development Commission for a study session, but then also having a public hearing, and then it's adopted by resolution at council. So it's a shorter process for the actual adoption, but we will have many, many opportunities for the public to be involved before it gets to this point. Then lastly, wanted to just give you an idea how is the comprehensive plan used. It guides how we grow our services, our systems, and it doesn't spell out every detail. Instead, it's going to try and connect with some of our other plans, like our Parks and Recreation plan, our multimodal plan. We'll try to connect some of those plans together and offer guidance for particular parts of the city. And so it will be used in several of these areas for like development and land use. That's what the planning and ComDev uses on a regular basis. We look at our future land use map. We look, a lot of our applications will ask us for compliance with comprehensive plan or compatibility with a comprehensive plan. So that's where we're going to look at making sure we have goals, objectives, and policies that we feel like will support those applications. It's used in decision making. So when we bring an application to a Community Development Commission or council, we will have that guidance from the comprehensive plan for that. Community engagement, again, this is a living document similar to our land use code that if we need to make a change to it, it's something we can amend. And then lastly, planning and zoning, it's going to give us guidance for our land use and development code. In most instances, once somebody rewrites a comprehensive plan, typically land use amendments do follow that. And so that is all I have for the comprehensive plan.
Thank you very much, Jamie. Councilor Koso.
Thanks, Jamie. I appreciate it. So comprehensive plans in the 10 years, I've always had a little bit of a trouble with them just because we've got staff turnover and the community can change so much within those 10 years. Do we look at success or failures from the last comprehensive plan and make that part of the presentation back to council, what we thought we were going to do 10 years ago and what actually happened?
Not necessarily fully in that manner. We will start with the existing comprehensive plan before we just throw it out and start over. And we will look at that to see, okay, if we accomplish some things, great. We'll take those off of the plate and we'll look at some of the other things to evaluate. Do we still want to go down that path? Is this still relevant? So that'll be our starting point, but it's not usually the intent to bring it forward to say, okay, we were successful in these areas and not in these, so we brought them forward. That's typically we will just bring forward a new plan to you based on the input that we receive from the public.
Was there a review at 5 years? I know you weren't here, but do you know if there was a review done at 5 years of the comp plan and was anything modified at that point?
I am not aware of that.
I don't know about the rest of the council, but it'd be interesting the exercise would be interesting just to see some kind of synopsis of what was intended with the plan 10 years ago and what actually was achieved on it. I'm not sure what I'm asking for exactly, but there's just an element here. What I would love to see, do we need to institute something that gets a little bit more regular? If it's every 2 or 3 years, we're re-looking at the comp plan to make sure that we're trying to achieve these things. Or are we putting everybody through a massive exercise and then it goes on a shelf and just doesn't get, touched every 10 years? So
Typically, what you'll see is more a future land use map amendment, where somebody's land use is not compatible with what they want to do. That'll be an amendment we bring forward. But I can tell you, as part of the scope of work we've asked for from the consultant, is a matrix at the end that is something that will be heavily utilized to say, okay, here's a list of all of the things that we wanted to accomplish. Here's a timeline for those, and we will be able to continue to track those. And the consultant will work with us to provide strategies that, okay, if a year down the road, we were supposed to accomplish these things, and if we didn't, okay, now where can we step in and hopefully get to those? So I think we'll have better tracking mechanisms after with the new plan.
I don't know, is that of interest to the rest of council at all? I mean, is there any merit in going back to the past, or just start with a new comp plan and go forward?
I mean, personally, I wouldn't mind seeing kind of where we were, but I don't want to make a huge full length study session on it. But I mean, would it be interesting to see where we were 10 years ago and what those plans were, and then how do we take some of those nuggets of information of what we planned on versus what we actually accomplished, and then apply that to the next round? I think could be beneficial. But I don't
maybe a top 5 things that were successful.
Give us a 15-minute hot shot on where it was, but. Yeah. Of where we were, what we did, and then what are the takeaways as we institute this new one.
Is there any overlap between the KPI strategic plan indicator? You know how we have that made dashboard now? Is there any overlap? I know they're different plans, obviously, but is there any overlap there that we could use to help with this information? Because I think it is good. I mean, I think it's good to know, like, when we throw something out there and say this is our goal, like, how much are we changing? And there could be good reason for change, right? Things change.
Yeah, you look at Durango Mesa.
Yeah, that
that
comes
was
in.
something
We have
that just
to.
wasn't there.
Yeah.
Pickleball courts and stuff that is just kind of popped up. That's been
Totally. But something has to give when you do those things, and so it's not a bad thing. It's interesting.
It seems to me like there would be some merit in knowing what we had said 10 years ago we were going to work on. That might elevate it a little bit from my thinking, just as one counselor, that we haven't been working on this for 10 years. It is still considered something of a priority, and maybe we look at it a little differently in regards to budgeting, priorities, et cetera. Don't know.
Be good to know the genesis of why that was important 10 years ago, and why it was such a priority at the time.
Sorry, Jamie, that's a little vague, broad thing there. You deserve better than that, but if we could maybe take it, I think that covered my questions. Thank you.
Okay, Councilor Yazzie.
Thank you for that broad overview of what you're intending to do. I was curious, okay, so you're just having the community engagement during the summer. Is it possible to do like more community engagement in the fall? Because a lot of families are gone on vacation during the summer.
We will initially start things probably in June-ish, but probably won't kick it up until probably August timeframe. So probably the bulk of the large engagement will be done fall and then again in the spring.
Counselor Lawyer?
Speaking of 10 years ago, we didn't have like a housing or economic development division or whatever we have. It's called. Thank you. Thank you. Prosperity division. How will this integrate into housing and economic development? Will this be like a new part of it? Because obviously it wasn't in our last comprehensive plan, right?
We did touch on economic development and a lot of the art-related items. We will work with the Creative District to continue to have that relationship there. And Prosperity will be a large partner in developing the plan.
Okay. Yeah, things like that. They've changed. So, okay. Thank you.
Great. Counselor Gonzalez.
Oh, okay. So thank you. I know that these comprehensive plans are a requirement. And who requires them?
The state of Colorado does, the Department of Local Affairs.
Is it because it's required? There's no funding associated with it. You don't get a gold star. There's no reason. I mean, other than we are required to have a comprehensive plan, it almost like doesn't matter what's in it.
Comprehensive plans are used to delineate the land use and the growth patterns within the city. It doesn't dig down into those specifics of what kind of use you want here or what kind of, where do we want things in certain areas. It looks at it from a broad perspective of, okay, what does it look like now? And if we grow in this area in industrial or in commercial or a number of residential, what is the impact to our infrastructure and things like that to make sure that we're planning adequately for the future when we have applications come forward. So the comprehensive plan is really the umbrella for our development of our community. And it's the land use is what is going to start the driving force behind that. And some other states, you're required to have a comprehensive plan in order to even have a zoning ordinance. So that's really what the premise came from in comprehensive plans.
So I know some people really love the comprehensive planning process. It's like you can be very technical, and yet most communities actually don't go back and check the results. Is that fair? Or do we know? I know that some of my colleagues are asking, like, are there really any metrics associated with it? We're not asking for metrics here, right? It doesn't matter what the metric, if we failed at every single one of them, we would still make the same plan.
The comprehensive plan is aspirational, and depending on how much we put in there, sometimes we put too much. You're not going to get to all of it. But there are a lot of things in there that we want to make sure we're looking towards those and that we're using those as a guide when we're approving developments. But yes, there are some plans that sit and collect dust and they're used only for planning applications and they're not tracked very well. But we're trying to create a mechanism to where we can track that and ensure that we're putting something in place that is useful to the community.
And so when you selected the consultant, how did you determine what consultant to use, given that there were no metrics in place?
We created a very lengthy scope of work of the expectations of what we wanted to have within the plan, and the amount of community engagement, the role the city would play within that. And initially had 10 submittals we reviewed and chose the top 3 to bring in and do a more intense evaluation of meeting the state requirements for the strategic smart growth and the water supply elements, how they would handle the engagement part of it and what they would offer and bring to the table for that, how they would fold sustainability into different things. And so we used that as a guide as well, and also creating an ongoing implementation strategy for us, not something that's just going to sit and staff would have to go 5 years later to try to figure out, okay, what did we do? We're trying to make sure we create an ability for us to monitor it on a regular basis to be able to ensure we're having success with the plan.
Okay. Okay. Well, I'm always reluctant with these because it's a ton of community work. It's a ton of community engagement. They're often very long. So whomever is committed to participating in the plan, like really has to be committed. I mean, I don't know if you mentioned there were certain stakeholder groups, sometimes there are like almost its own committee that's set up to review the plan. But that actually it's really just to meet a requirement. So I just want to hope that, we are hopefully getting sufficient metrics. I think, that I'm concerned that you said we actually don't go back and check what was done before. We're just, we've got to do this plan because it's a requirement by the state. And if we don't get, I don't know what we don't get funding, we don't get, right. But, and so anyway, that's why I just hope that because it is so much work, it's very labor intensive. How much was the consultant?
We had a budget of up to $150,000.
So I know that these plans are very expensive, often $150,000 for a consultant that really is just a compliance issue that we have to do because we're required to do it by the state. So, I know that it has to be done. And so, that's that. But having been involved in a couple of them before, they never really benefited the community. So hopefully we can do something different.
Yes, ma'am.
Councilor Crisholm.
Jamie, just one last question. Do you know if the comprehensive plans, are they aspirational goals within the comprehensive plan? Are they conservative goals? Are they just a mix of in between depending on the department? Is there any guide like that?
No, there's no guidance. It could be whatever we want it to be. And they're usually action oriented. They're not meant to be prescriptive. It's not going to say the city shall do this. It's going to say to consider doing this or evaluate doing this.
Okay.
It's more looking at giving us opportunities to grow and to improve in areas that maybe we're not so certain of, or maybe we want to evaluate something with ADUs. We want to create a new system for ADUs. It would create the mechanism to support that, but not require it.
Okay, great. Thank you. That's it.
Jamie, thank you for giving us the breakdown on all of this. Forgive my ignorance, but are there any sort of grant mechanisms tied to comprehensive plans, or since this is required by the state, do you know if there are potential better opportunities for grants if we have like a better or more robust comprehensive plan, or is that pretty nebulous?
And at times, yes, they can be used mostly for probably capital and infrastructure related projects. But if we wanted to, like our housing action plan, if we created support mechanisms within our comprehensive plan, there are a lot of times it's looked on more positively if you have those support mechanisms in place.
Okay. Okay, great. Thanks so much. Any other questions or comments from council? Great. Thanks so much. Appreciate it, Jamie. All right, moving on to number 4, proposed new agenda items for discussion. Is it just open for us to talk about, or is it, since there's nothing there, we move on? Okay, great. Shirley, you have your hand up still. Is there something that you wanted for a study session? Councilor Koso, you want more time?
This is just general discussion. Yeah, it's just general discussion. I think at some point, it's been a while for a couple study sessions. The council just wanted ability to throw agenda items out and discuss amongst yourselves without placing them on an agenda quite yet. This would be just a general discussion, can't commit, can't give direction.
Great.
So, council, after considerable community pushback, former mayors and council members' objections to it, and an editorial in the Durango Herald condemning it, is any councilor interested in discussing the vote for Mayor Pro Tem that took place on April 21st?
I guess I will look to legal. I mean, if we pass something in the majority, do we bring it back for reconsideration?
So what's the question?
Well, I mean,
Certainly you guys have avenues where you can have general discussions about things that happened. The technical rule for a motion that passed is that for it to be reconsidered, it needs to be done at that meeting. Arguably, there's some jurisdictions that do it within 24 hours of the meeting, but that has passed. You could technically bring a motion to reconsider or to rescind the vote, but that takes a supermajority. So those are the parameters under Robert's rules to either undo something right after it happened, or reconsider something right after it happened, or to rescind something that happened at your last meeting.
thank you. Councilor Gonzalez.
Well, I definitely am concerned about that issue. I think it should be discussed again. I feel like I asked you, Mark, very specifically if an item could be brought up again. And it seems like you said we could. So I guess I'm surprised by your answer.
So I did, in anticipation of this being asked, I went and looked at Robert's rules again. We did have a general discussion about your council rules on whether or not when someone's in the minority on a losing vote, if they can bring it back. That doesn't apply to general provisions. But that would be a legislative matter. Like if you wanted to bring up a new item that impacted an old item, it could do that. So this gets very specific as to a specific vote that happened as opposed to a legislative item that passed. I don't know if I'm getting too technical or confusing, but I understand how what I told you seemed confusing. Because generally you guys do not have a rule that, let's say that you decided to open up ADUs. If you wanted to come back a week later and change that, you could. Specifically as to the vote that occurred in a specific discussion about it, that's what I just cited is what Robert's rules said. So there is a distinction there. It's not a super bright line distinction. And I think I've told anyone that asked, this is your council and a majority is going to get anything on the table. To rescind a vote to say that it was done improperly or in violation of tradition, that's going to take a supermajority according to Robert's rules.
Okay. Mayor, I think I still have the floor.
Of course.
I believe that what happened is also a reflection of a charter that's very outdated. I believe that we need an opportunity to review the charter. I was going to suggest this in our new business, but if it's appropriate here, and I do think it is, seems like a study session is appropriate to review the charter, given that it is hasn't been updated since 1993. And there are some language in there that I would think needs to be updated, just language. And that it's going to take a very long time for us to review the charter. It's something that involves a lot of community input. Usually there's a third party that goes and reviews and creates a whole committee and a commission that is established by the council. So I look forward to doing that. I think it's a really important issue, especially all the discussion about voting rights that has been in the national news. I think this is an opportunity to update a charter that at a minimum is outdated. I think on the far end could be considered illegal. So, or maybe not anymore after what happened at the Supreme Court, but I think we need an opportunity to review the charter. And I know that it's going to be quite a long process and look forward to having that discussion with the council and with the community.
Councilor Yazzie.
Oh, thank you. Okay, so you're saying review the charter, or you're saying review the vote on the election, or both?
My question.
Your question is review the vote on the election.
Correct.
All righty. I think that would be a bad idea because council made a decision. I made a nomination based upon my experience with working the issues with you in particular. And I just still feel like the best option forward for this council is to continue with both our mayor and our mayor pro tem to lead us through these issues with, continuing working on the City Hall PD with the contractor, going ahead and looking at the flock issues, going ahead and deal with the whole immigration issue, and basically giving confidence to our employees that they're not going to feel like they're being attacked all the time. They really feel strongly that when you approach them, they're afraid. I mean, people want to know why I didn't say these things that evening. And it's like, well, I didn't want to get down and dirty. I mean, I've got a list here, given the fact that, I had the Herald ask me, why didn't I talk to you? Okay, you know what? You're an adult. You're a male. You should be able to monitor your behavior.
Gilda, we're going to keep this above the belt, please.
Okay.
Please.
See, that's why I didn't want to say anything. But no, I think the vote was good and we should not revisit it.
Council, I guess I just take the moment to say that there's been intimations, accusations, and yet no proof. Broad statements that have said that employees are afraid of me. There's 400 employees. A, you don't know all the employees. B, I challenge anybody to come forward with somebody who has felt that fear and is justified in it. The tone that has been set, the intimations that I can't lead, that I am aggressive with employees, these are all narratives that have been invented and have no basis in fact. So I'm disappointed in the vote and the way that it went. The surprise factor, the fact that nobody's had a conversation with me about any of these issues. I
guess the only thing I'll say is that I'm looking forward to our special retreat tomorrow to hopefully talk through some of these into more detail, and whatever the path forward out of that is hopefully a foundation that we can all build upon. I can only speak for myself of what my aspirations are for that meeting. I'm hoping that we can all come from a place of respect and care about the community, even though we disagree on things on the dais, that we're going to go into that meeting with the intention of building a more cohesive council, rooted in respect for one another. I guess that's the only thing that I really have to say at this moment until we get past that. Any other questions or comments or new agenda items? Great. On to number 5, grant approval update from Mr. Crosby.
Thank you, Mayor Woodruff. I appreciate everyone's flexibility with the virtual presentation today. I'm going to do a quick screen share. All right. I'm here today to present a quick grant approval update. We tend to tie this to innovative housing and economic development. Before you today is going to be one grant that you're quite familiar with, the Renew grant. We'll have 2 grants on tonight's regular meeting agenda for the Renew grant. And then I do want to take 1 extra minute describing the Durango Impact and Resiliency grant. This is the first time you're seeing this grant in 2026. It is a slightly retooled grant program that combines 2 environmental sustainability and resiliency grant programs together. And we really did that intentionally as Visit Durango rolled into the city, and we were able to, we think, deliver a more impactful grant program. So a quick overview of the Durango Impact and Resiliency Grant. This funds community-driven projects that are really focused on advancing the city's sustainability goals, as well as our destination management plans. So again, combining that really deep well of institutional knowledge from the city's sustainability programs and combining that with the destination management subject matter expertise that Visit Durango has brought to the city and really been able to enhance the way that we're able to invest these dollars into community. These programs, they tend to represent a spectrum of what environmental sustainability and resilience looks like in our community. We feel like we have a good ballot of first round 2026 Durango Impact and Resiliency Grant programs to really represent that spectrum before you tonight. General program guidelines, the average award falls between that $5,000 and $10,000 range. And then we do illuminate the pathway for grant applicants to apply for over $10,000. We tend to require a bit more when it comes to metrics and project and program deliverables when it comes to those larger dollar awards. Folks from the private business community, the nonprofit community, general community organizations are welcome to apply for these grant funds. And again, we've been able to kind of combine forces with Visit Durango. So we do have kind of a joint funding source for this grant program. A portion, about $50,000, comes from lodgers tax funding, and then about $35,000 comes from our retail carryout bag fee. So I just wanted to try to give you maybe a slightly more in-depth overview of the Durango Impact and Resiliency Grant, knowing that you're already quite familiar with the Renew Grant. Didn't want to spend time refreshing you on that. So on tonight's regular meeting agenda, for the Impact and Resiliency Grant, you'll see 7 projects recommended for funding. We're recommending just over $81,000 worth of funding. In all likelihood, we will only have one round of this grant program for 2026. We'll see how other projects and programs come in potentially under budget and might offer a round 2 a little later in 26. But for now, we'll plan on just the single grant round for 2026. And then for the Renew Grant, you'll see 2 projects on the docket for approval. Combined, both of these projects are just over $7,000, and that leaves the fund with about $15,000 worth of funding, with a few grants already in the pipeline for June's meeting. So it's looking like the Renew Grant funds will be exhausted by the end of 2026, which is great to see such an appetite from the business community and interest in the Renew Grant program in 2026. That wraps it up for our grant approval summary. Happy to answer any questions that folks might have.
Thank you, Tommy. Councilor Cuso.
Tommy, this is the grant for the old fort out at Hesperus. Is that correct?
Correct.
I guess I don't understand. We're outside the city limits significantly there. Is the group that we're serving with this grant, is it happening within the city limits? And we're working with residents, or is this out at Old Fort and this is something that's more applicable to county?
Great question. So for this project specifically, we're really leaning into the agro-tourism side of this project, knowing that within city limits, there aren't necessarily a lot of agro-tourism opportunities. We're working with the Old Fort team for their project. They're going to need to provide a supplement to their application that explains the direct ties to the sustainability of Durango's tourism economy. That'll be, data and narrative on farmers, students, customers, and other Old Fort programs and how those are directly tying into City of Durango's tourism efforts. They're going to be promoting the programming and events to visitors through reasonable channels, including coordination with Visit Durango. And then they'll be allowing Visit Durango specifically to photograph and highlight their project and programs to be used for Visit Durango agro-tourism marketing purposes. With understanding that there will be coordination on any culturally significant or sensitive aspects of Old Fort programming. So this was definitely a unique one, and I appreciate you highlighting it. But we're using this as an opportunity to bolster Visit Durango's agro-tourism resources and marketing tools.
Yeah, big fan of us promoting local agriculture for sure. So we'll kind of wait and see how this one goes. So thanks.
Absolutely.
Great. Any other questions or comments from council? All right. If there's nothing else further, we are adjourned.